It was an international disaster what happened in the Oval Office today. What was intended to be the start of negotiations over a deal concerning Ukraine's rare earth minerals turned into a remarkable confrontation. The twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald the Con Trump and JD Vance chastised Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, telling him he wasn't grateful enough to the United States. Take a look.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
You're
playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
That's back
to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this entire meeting, you said thank you.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Allison McManus, the Managing Director of National Security and International Policy at the Center for American Progress, joins me now to discuss how this could impact our position with other countries. Allison, thank you for joining us in the most academic way possible. My first question is, what the hell?
I wish I could say it was a pleasure to be on the show. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. But what a disgrace. I mean, how do you watch, listen, see the way that President Trump, Vice President Vance, and the other president of the United States, Elon Musk, online have debased themselves in their attempt to humiliate a hero like President Volodymyr Zelensky? It's a disgrace. There's just no other way to put it. It's embarrassing to watch. I feel embarrassed as an American that this is the way that we would treat a noble partner and a noble president like Volodymyr Zelensky.
So, Allison, we know that when meetings like this happen, so many conversations and debates can happen behind closed doors. There could be shouting matches and the like. But some people are saying the way that this was staged, the way that JD Vance was there as well, that people are looking at this more of a sabotage and an ambush than something that was kind of happened spur of the moment because of the tone and some disagreements. How do you see it?
This was absolutely deliberate. President Trump and JD Vance invited Zelensky to the United States under the pretense that they wanted to enter into good faith negotiations around how Zelensky could save his country, save his countrymen, brave Ukrainians who have been fighting on the front lines, who have been dying for their country. He came to the United States in good faith on their behalf. and frankly, on behalf of Europeans and Americans, because we also have an interest in standing up to Putin's aggression. He came in good faith, and they completely threw him under the bus. This was not something spur of the moment. This doesn't just happen ad hoc. This was absolutely something planned, and we know that it's something planned because it's in line with the type of approach that the Trump administration has been taking to the negotiations, and because we saw this really as something that was coordinated, happening not only in their discussions in person with Zelensky, but also in the way that we saw, again, online, Elon Musk making fun of Zelensky for his clothes. He wears those clothes to show solidarity with his troops on the front lines. He doesn't shave his beard because he wants to show solidarity with troops on the front lines. So 100%, this was a deliberate attempt to humiliate Zelensky, a partner in American and European Americans and Europeans standing up to Putin.
We actually have a soundbite of what you were just talking about. Take a look, everyone.
My second question for President Zelensky. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, you have problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting.
I don't have such.
Office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe. Well, maybe something like yours. Yes. Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
And when we look at that Allison, reporter mocking him and making fun of him like that, it just really makes me wonder. And then kind of going off of what you were saying, Trump also said right at the end of that, this is going to make for great TV and great ratings or something to that effect, which also makes it seem more and more like an ambush. Are you, as I should say, for lack of a better word, pessimistic as many people feel today who have said that this is unquestionably the end of basically an 80-year period of alliance building in United States history, and that this government is firmly on the side of countries like Russia and China and Iran, or is that a stretch too far?
It remains to be seen, but I think the writing is on the wall, and we've been hearing this from our European allies for a while now, including, I think there was some apprehension. Trump said months ago that he wouldn't mind if Russia invaded a European country. So this is just the latest and most egregious example now that Trump is occupying the Oval Office and is the one who is the commander-in-chief of our armed services, who's responsible for the United States national security and who's responsible for stewarding these alliances. Of course, these kind of demonstrations mean a lot more than whatever he may have said on the campaign trail. Now he's doing real damage that can't be undone. We heard after JD Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference just a couple of weeks ago that some of our European allies are now considering the United States more as an adversary than they are as a friend. That includes stalwart allies like Germany. So I think that there's real damage here that's being done that can't be undone. And the real harm of this, the real shame of all of this is that we have really an interest in seeing a just war. We have an interest in seeing a just end to the war in Ukraine. Trump talks about peace. Everybody wants to see peace. That's not the question. What he is doing is he is emboldening Putin to continue with his aggression. So not only is he not doing the serious work of trying to support Zelensky in achieving a just and lasting peace for Ukrainians, he is also emboldening Putin to potentially take further steps down the line that will jeopardize European security at a time when the Europeans realize they can no longer count on the United States as an ally. So what we're seeing is really a fundamental reshaping of the kind of transatlantic security alliances that have kept Americans and Europeans safe since the end of World War II.
Questions from the panel. Michael, your question.
Yes, thanks for coming on and sharing this information with us. So I guess, well, maybe two questions I have. One would be, where does Volodymyr Zelensky go from here? We know he left the White House today. Actually, he was escorted out. He wanted to continue meeting. He did not sign the planned agreement on providing the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals. They were going to provide 50% to U.S. and Russia. So where does he go from here? And to me, this seems like a shakedown by a thug like Donald Trump, as well as Vladimir Putin, to get more out of Ukraine, but with no security agreement, with no agreement on any real protection that the U.S. will provide to Ukraine.
That's exactly right. What the ultimate end goal was today for the Trump administration was to make Zelensky look weak, to try to discredit him so that he wouldn't be seen as a quote unquote credible interlocutor, to make, frankly, the American people think that this guy isn't a guy that the United States should be backing and supporting in peace negotiations. So he's trying to weaken Zelensky's position, which de facto strengthens Putin's position. Now, where does that leave Zelensky today? Well, two things. First of all, there's still an active conflict that's happening. Zelensky is still the president of a country that is actively at war. There are Ukrainian troops on the front lines right now, and that's going to be Zelensky's number one priority as he returns to Kyiv, is thinking tactically about how to hold the territory that Ukraine has held thus far and ensure that Russia is not able to make further advances. We saw at the end of last year that former President Biden was able to use presidential drawdown authority to get weapons to Ukraine, but those aren't going to last forever. So one thing that Zelensky's going to have to do is to think tactically about the battlefield to try to hold the line there. The second thing he's going to need to do is to regroup with European allies who are now also regrouping and trying to understand what it is that they're going to be able to provide Ukraine in terms of security guarantees or further economic support that it seems pretty decisive that they'll need to do now without the United States. Again, I don't think that this necessarily means that there won't be any hope for any kind of return to negotiations. Actually, I do think that we'll see continued discussion of negotiations, but it's very hard at this point to see how the Americans, how the Trump administration comes back to the table in any good faith way in support of Zelensky, or how Zelensky, frankly, would be able to trust the Trump administration after the spectacle that we saw today. So really, he's going to be looking to the Europeans. And that's an open question as to what tangibly the Europeans will be able to put together in terms of a security guarantee that can actually protect Ukraine's sovereignty, push back on Putin's aggression, and deliver security for Europe and, frankly, for the world.
And Raven, your question?
I mean, thank you so much for these insights. I'm particularly struck by what you named in terms of this almost like faux respectability position of, well, he's not wearing a suit and that's not respectable. Meanwhile, he's literally trying to protect his peoplehood from war. So that seems really trivial and kind of adds the disgrace that you're naming. My question for you is really about how this moment is going to impact how we're viewed as a country on the international stage moving forward. So how do you think this disgraceful movement is going to impact the way that we're viewed and also how we're treated on an international stage?
Well, I think, as we said earlier, I mean, this is really placing the United States in the same camp as a country like Russia. It makes the United States look like we are not credible allies, one, that we can't be trusted, two, and three, like we are simply interested in transactional foreign policy that only, frankly, benefits the president and those around him. It's, I think, very clear to our allies, partners, and our adversaries around the world that Trump is interested in getting what's best for Trump. And I think we need to be reminded that Russia is still an adversary. Russia still has ballistic missiles pointed at U.S. cities. There's nothing Putin would like more than to see the United States weakened. So when Trump appeals to Putin directly, Trump is really only looking out for Trump and his interests. And I think that that's going to be clear to partners, allies, and adversaries all around the world. That's, as an American, I have to say that's a really scary thought.
Matt, your question.
Yeah, so Allison, I have multiple questions, but I probably won't ask them as artfully as Michael. I'm not as smart, so bear with me. But my three questions are this. The first question is, as it relates to the rare minerals agreement, is it customary for a country to exchange, security for something like the rare minerals that are available in the country? That to me seems to be morally reprehensible, but I don't know international law, and I don't know if that's a customary thing in geopolitics. But first, if you could just shed some light on if that's normal or if that's Trump trying to, create a deal, number one. Number two, how do you think this affects Germany and its rising conservatism there? I'm very concerned about what's happening there, and I'd like your insight on how those two things may be working in tandem. And finally, what is your thought on the effect it may have on our relationship with China and any other kind of brazen adversaries, and what we can expect to come from this?
So on the first question regarding, whether or not this is customary to see this kind of trade-off, it's hard to tell because we never really got to see what the details of this deal would be. If this were about creating certain investment funds or, really what was supposed to happen today was that they were going to talk about what that deal actually meant. And I think the way that Trump wanted to portray this and actually that we've even seen some, conservative funded media that's going, is that like this was Trump coming in and he's going to take the critical minerals and that's going to be that. But, we never actually really got to see what that deal would look like. So it's really hard to say, whether that would have been hypothetically a good or bad deal for the Ukrainians. Whether or not that was all a ruse, again, to just try to bring Zelensky to the White House to humiliate him, I can't say. But ultimately, we never really got to see the details. With regard to Germany, really, concerning trends in the way that the Trump administration, JD Vance and others have been, and Elon Musk very publicly on social media have been supporting the far-right AfD party. But we shouldn't forget that Germany is still going to be driven by the interests of those that are in the center, in the CDU. And so I think that we'll still see a Germany that's very keen to support Ukraine. But let's keep an eye on what some of those far-right trends look like in the way that these parties are bolstering each other all around the world. With regard to the question on China, I do think that, we should keep in mind that after years of isolation on the world stage, after years of economic distress because of global sanctions, including many sanctions from the United States, Russia is in a really weak position. And the fact that the Trump administration is giving Putin this lifeline, I think that a country like China is going to watch very closely. Obviously, Russia and China are very different in terms of how they're carrying out global ambitions. China has not necessarily had the same kind of imperialistic aggression that we've seen from Russia, but it is still challenging and competing with the United States militarily. And certainly we'll be watching what happens in Ukraine and looking at the United States, again, as a country that is willing to negotiate, willing to play ball with authoritarians.
Well, last question, since we do have you for this time. I'm already seeing in the comments here. I'm seeing in comments in other spaces, and I'm sure you're seeing it as well. Why should Americans care? We need to not be engaged in these other wars. Know this, some people actually think we have U.S. troops there. I mean, they just don't know. Why should the average American care about what happened today?
I think we should remember, and this is, not something that is present in our lifetimes for most Americans, this idea of being drawn into this kind of world war. But, the alliances that we developed after World War II, we developed because we did not want to see another land war in Europe. We did not want to see Americans going overseas to fight and die on European territory. And let's not forget, during World War II, the United States was attacked as well. During the Cold War, we saw that Russia was training its nuclear warheads on the United States. Russia still has nuclear missiles that are pointed at the United States. So even if it feels here in the U.S. like we're living in this time of relative security, we need to remember that is because of the alliances that we built. That's because we now get valuable intelligence. We have these security guarantees with our European partners where we know that we can share the burden of providing for security and providing for defense. If that goes away, as it looks like it's going away right now, we are very, very much on our own. The amount of money that we have given to Ukraine, and this hasn't been, American boots on the ground, pales in comparison to the kind of tax cuts that we just saw, passed in Congress. So, we need to just keep in mind that while it may be that we invest a little bit today in these alliances and in these partnerships, we are very much benefiting and we are saving costs down the line. Costs and American lives down the line.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $6.65 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.